A ship deemed absolutely unsinkable was about to meet its destiny with an iceberg in the freezing Atlantic waters. But the story behind that tragic night on April 14, 1912, runs far deeper than what history books have taught us for over a century. Hidden secrets, mysterious decisions, and forgotten details paint a picture of human arrogance, negligence, and bravery that still echoes today. What happened in those final hours aboard the RMS Titanic has captivated the world for generations, yet numerous mysteries remain unsolved, locked away with the ship at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. The night before everything changed, the RMS Titanic was nothing short of an engineering marvel. At 182 feet long, this luxury ocean liner represented the pinnacle of human achievement in 1912. Yet what most people do not realize is that before setting sail on its maiden voyage, a dangerous fire was already raging inside the ship's coal bunkers. According to crew testimonies from the British inquiry into the disaster, the flames were still burning when the vessel departed from Southampton for New York. Captain Edward Smith was well aware of this hazardous situation. Rather than delay the voyage or address the fire properly, the ship continued at full speed despite multiple iceberg warnings. Some historians argue that the owner, financier J.P. Morgan, pressured the captain to maintain this dangerous pace. Interestingly, Morgan himself was scheduled to board the Titanic but cancelled at the last minute, citing a nervous breakdown. The timing seemed suspicious, but the reason for his sudden withdrawal remains unclear even today. As the ship glided toward disaster, the weather conditions were almost supernatural in their deception. The Atlantic that night was eerily calm, like a mirror of black glass. There were no waves, no wind, and no fog to create warnings. This peaceful facade masked one of history's greatest dangers. Without waves to disturb them, phosphorescent plankton that would normally glow and outline an iceberg remained invisible. The absence of a swell also prevented the temperature changes that usually signal icebergs to experienced sailors. When the lookouts finally spotted the iceberg, the ship had less than a minute to change course. At that critical moment, another secret was revealed. The Titanic's entire supply of binoculars was locked away in a storage compartment below deck. The crew member responsible for the navigation equipment had been reassigned just before the voyage, and he forgot to hand over the key. No one conducted a safety inspection to verify that essential equipment was accessible. This single act of negligence may have cost thousands of lives. One of the most chilling coincidences in history involved journalist William T. Stead, traveling first class on the Titanic. In 1886, Stead had written a fictional story about an Atlantic steamer that struck another ship and sank due to insufficient lifeboats. Most passengers drowned because there were not enough boats to save everyone. Stead intended this story to draw attention to lax maritime regulations. His words were prophetic. Stead perished in the disaster, one of the approximately 500 victims whose warnings had been ignored by an industry blind to the dangers he described. A lifeboat scandal decades in the making, the ship carried only 20 lifeboats, a number that seems shocking by modern standards. These boats could accommodate approximately 200 people, just over half of the 223 passengers and crew aboard. While this met the legal requirements of 1912, it was morally indefensible for a supposedly unsinkable luxury liner. Here is where the mystery deepens. Alexander Carlisle, the general manager of the shipbuilder Harland & Wolff, had submitted plans for 64 lifeboats, later reduced to 32. However, in 1910, someone decided to reduce this number even further. Carlisle quit his position that same year, allegedly over disputes regarding lifeboat capacity. He suffered a nervous breakdown and retired at the early age of 55. The exact circumstances surrounding his departure and the reasons for the lifeboat reduction have never been officially explained, and they remain one of the Titanic's most puzzling secrets. The Star-class divisions aboard the ship were equally disturbing. While first-class passengers enjoyed luxurious accommodations, the more than 700 third-class passengers were crammed into minimal quarters. For their entire voyage, only 2 bathtubs were available to serve all of them. This inequality extended to their chances of survival. When the ship struck the iceberg, the third-class passengers were not immediately informed. Compartment doors that separated classes were sealed automatically to contain the flooding, effectively trapping hundreds of people below deck. The death rate among third-class passengers was substantially higher than any other group. The breaking point: for decades, official reports claimed that the Titanic sank intact. However, survivors insisted that the ship broke into 2 pieces before disappearing beneath the waves. This testimony was dismissed until 1985, when Robert Ballard discovered the wreck. The discovery confirmed what witnesses had been saying all along. The ship had split completely in half. What caused this catastrophic structural failure? Scientists blamed different culprits. Some pointed to inferior rivets in the hull that contained high concentrations of smelting residue called slag. This material could cause metal to become brittle and split under pressure. Others argued that when the iceberg struck and water poured in, the immense pressure on the ship's frame caused it to separate. A study published in Scientific American determined that the failure began in the ship's bottom structure when it reached an angle of about 17 degrees. The fracture then spread across the breadth of the ship and upward, eventually creating two distinct pieces of the double bottom. The exact moment and mechanism of this break remains a subject of scientific debate. Heroes and mysteries in the final hours. As the ship sank into darkness, acts of extraordinary courage emerged from the chaos. The 8 members of the ship's orchestra, under the direction of bandmaster Wallace Hartley, chose to remain on deck and continue playing music. They were not crew members and faced no obligation to stay. Yet they played on as the ship tilted and water climbed higher, believing their music might calm the terrified passengers. What exactly did they play as their final melody? This has become one of the Titanic's most debated mysteries. Many survivors reported hearing the hymn nearer, "My God, to Thee." In fact, Hartley had reportedly told a colleague years earlier that if he ever found himself on a sinking ship, this hymn would be one of the songs he would play. However, other survivors heard nothing of the sort. One wireless operator claimed the last music was Autumn, a popular waltz of that era. Neither song appeared in the White Star Line's official songbook for musicians. No one will ever know the true answer, as none of the band members survived to tell the tale. Among the ship's most famous passengers were millionaire J.J. Astor and his young pregnant wife. When the lifeboats were being loaded, Astor ensured his wife was placed safely in a boat, but he remained aboard and perished. Another heartbreaking story involved the elderly couple Isidore and Ida Strauss, owners of Macy's department stores. Witnesses reported they were determined to stay together until the end. As the ship descended into icy waters, they held each other, accepting their shared fate. Their devotion became one of the most moving narratives from that terrible night. The nearby ships that changed everything. One mystery that overshadowed the entire disaster was the presence of the SS Californian. This vessel was sailing in the same area on that fateful night. The Californian's crew observed signals and lights from the Titanic. However, its radio operator had gone to bed, and the captain did not take immediate action to investigate or offer assistance. For decades, Captain Stanley Lord of the Californian was blamed for negligence. Investigations suggested the ship was much closer than the claimed 19.5 miles. However, when the Titanic wreck was discovered in 1985, the evidence exonerated Captain Lord, placing the Californian farther away than originally thought. Yet this discovery raised new questions. If the Californian was not responsible, then which ship might have been closer and ignored the distress signals? Some historians point to another vessel, the Samson, a Norwegian ship engaged in illegal seal hunting. If the Samson was indeed nearby, its captain may have deliberately ignored the Titanic's calls for help to avoid legal prosecution for illegal activities. The unsolved mysteries that remain, throughout the years, theories and questions have emerged that challenge the official narrative. Some researchers have suggested that the ship that actually sank was not the Titanic at all, but rather the damaged Olympic, with the name switched as part of an insurance fraud scheme. While most evidence refutes this claim, certain serial numbers found on recovered parts seem to support the theory, leaving room for lingering doubt. Others have speculated that the Titanic hit a hidden flow of pack ice rather than a single iceberg, or even that the ship was struck by a German submarine. None of these theories have been definitively proven or disproven. When Robert Ballard finally discovered the wreck in 1985, a secret mission was declassified that revealed the true circumstances of the search. Ballard had wanted to find the Titanic for years, but the U.S. Navy needed help exploring 2 sunken nuclear submarines, the USS Thresher and the USS Scorpion, located in the same general waters. The Navy gave Ballard funding for his search on the condition that he would first complete research on those classified vessels. The Titanic search provided the perfect cover story to keep the Soviet Union from following his movements. Ballard was told he had only 12 days left to find the legendary wreck after completing the submarine mission. Against all odds, he succeeded. This remarkable discovery allowed historians to verify survivor accounts and solve some mysteries that had puzzled researchers for more than 70 years. The unsinkable ship that sank. The Titanic's sinking was not simply a matter of fate or nature's indifference. It was the result of human decisions, some made with negligence and others with malice. The ship carried too few lifeboats because regulations did not require enough. Essential navigation equipment was locked away and inaccessible. A fire burned unchecked for weeks. The ship maintained dangerous speed through iceberg-infested waters. Class divisions determined who lived and who died. These were not mysteries, but deliberate choices made by powerful men more concerned with profit and schedule than with human lives. In the months and years following the disaster, inquiries were conducted in both the United States and Britain. New safety regulations were implemented. Ships were required to carry lifeboats for everyone aboard. Radio operators had to remain at their posts. Yet these changes came too late for the approximately 500 souls who perished that night. Their deaths exposed the hubris of an age that believed technology could transcend nature, that engineering could supersede caution, and that profit justified risk. More than a century later, the Titanic continues to remind us that no ship is truly unsinkable, and no system is infallible when human arrogance takes command.